Welcome back to All About the Sound, making learning English easier with the 3P approach. We are going to continue along our merry way with these PowerPoint presentations. We're going to begin understanding sound a little bit better. We're bringing our focus back to it being all about the sound. We're bringing our focus back to the 3Ps. And the first of those 3Ps is something called phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness. And that is all about becoming aware of the sounds we're hearing in each word, distinguishing the different sounds, and learning to pronounce those sounds. So that not only can we receive the message that others are giving us in English, but we're able to express ourselves so that we can share a message of meaning with others through our own understanding of the English language. So we're bringing it all back to all about the sound. So for the remainder of this phonemic awareness presentation, we're going to be aware that it's all about the sound, what we hear and the sounds we're making, right? So it's about the sound. When we talk about sound, we're talking about the basic unit of sound we discussed in Chapter 1, which is something called the phoneme. The phoneme is the basic unit of sound we will hear in each word. Back to the sound and back to the phoneme for the remainder of this presentation. Sound, we need to remember, is the basis of all language, not just English, but all language. Language started with sound. And later on, in order to represent that sound, someone somewhere came up with pictographs and then alphabets and then words and whatnot. But it started with the sound, so we're returning to that very basis of language, sound. And as I said before, the phoneme is the basic unit of sound you will hear in a word. So this presentation and all of Chapter 3 is about learning to hear those phonemes, distinguish the different phonemes you are hearing, and pronouncing those phonemes. Phonemic awareness is all about becoming aware of and distinguishing the different sounds in words. Phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is also about making these sounds through pronunciation. Pronunciation is the making of these sounds so that we can send a message to somebody else. Pronouncing a new language isn't easy. When we become so used to our first tongue or our first language, our muscles in our mouths, our tongues, our vocal cords have become so adept at using those muscles to create the proper sounds that we just take it for granted and we don't even have to try to pronounce differently. But when we're learning a new language, we have to be very mindful of how we're using our lips, how we're using our tongue and where we're placing our tongue, how we're using our mouth, how we're using our vocal cords. So it is really important when we're either hearing someone speak a different language, like English, to us when we're not that familiar to that language, that we watch the mouth of the person speaking and we watch our own mouth so that we are learning to pronounce the phonemes that make up the language we are learning much easier. So watch the mouth. Now, I am not a linguistic expert by any means, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know how you should be moving your mouth and how to pronounce appropriately. I'm only going to share with you what I know. But as you can see, there are many charts out there that help us to make these movements and that show us why they are important. But I will not be going into that depth. What I want you to know is that there are more than 44 phonemes in the English language. 44 phonemes. There is 44 different sounds that you need to hear and recognize, and there's 44 different speech movements that need to be made. 44 phonemes mean 44 different sounds to hear and 44 different speech movements to make. So 44 phonemes is a number you will hear in most English language learning. But in Canada, I am beginning to wonder if there is actually 48 phonemes heard in Canadian English. Every country has its own particular dialect. Every section of a country has its own particular dialect. So pronunciation may be different. Sounds used and the way they're used may be different. So what you're hearing may be different in Canada than it would be, say, in the United States or in Britain. So I am challenging that there might actually be 48 phonemes heard in Canadian English. Of course, I am no expert, so that is just a question that I'm posing to myself and to others. Is there actually 48 phonemes heard in Canadian English? Regardless, if you are new to Canada learning Canadian English, or if you're in Britain or in the States or some other English-speaking country, or if you're speaking a different language altogether, it is important to know that meaning is often conveyed by sound. To receive a message of meaning from others, we need to be able to recognize the phonemes correctly. So whatever phonemes are in a particular language and we're trying to understand that language, we need to know what those phonemes are and be able to recognize them correctly. To send a message of meaning that others will receive and understand, we need to make the sounds, make the phonemes correctly. So we need to practice our pronunciation. To receive a message, say in English if you're new to the English language, we need to be able to listen and recognize the different phonemes. To send a message in English, if you're new to the English language, we need to practice our pronunciation so that we can make those sounds, those phonemes, and send them correctly. Though we are still focusing on the sounds in the 3P approach, I cannot stress enough how important the meaning in the messages we're sending and receiving are. Language is all about sending a message to others and receiving a message from others. As a sender, I want to send a clear message that you, as the receiver, understand. As the receiver, I want to hear and understand what message of meaning you are sending me. I want to send you something that makes sense to you. I want to receive what you're saying, and I want it to make sense to me. So, we need to learn and recognize those phonemes. And this is what the chapter is all about. Learning and recognizing the phonemes. The phonemes, again, are the basic units of sound we hear in each word. Each word is usually made up of many phonemes. So, in Chapter 3 of All About the Sound, and in this presentation on phonemic awareness, we are not concerned about letters. We are not concerned about the letters of any alphabet. We are concerned about the sound. We're not concerned about what we're seeing. We're concerned about what we are hearing and what sounds we are making. So you will not see letters in the next 2 chapters of this book or these following presentations in phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. We're focusing on sound. So sound is often represented by something called a phonetic symbol. A phonetic symbol. So the phonetic symbol for the sounds we're hearing may be written down in a form, but that is not the alphabet. It is simply a way that we can understand universally the sounds made in any language. So it's international and it is universal, not just related to English. Phonetic symbols are the sounds that we're hearing in any language. So there are many, many sounds in something called the International Phonetic Alphabet. The International Phonetic Alphabet. But English uses 44 and possibly up to 48 of those phonemes, those phonetic symbols that will apply to English language speakers. So this is a phonetic alphabet chart used for the English language. You will see all different symbols. They look like the alphabet, the Latin alphabet, but they are not. Okay, they're actually the Greek and Latin alphabet. But we are just looking at them and recognizing that each one of those symbols represents a sound. Okay? The top ones are what we might refer to as our vowel sounds, and the bottom 3 rows are what represent our consonant sounds. So it's not the alphabet, it's the phonetic alphabet chart. Where do we get this chart? A very valuable resource that I will ask you to check into for your own benefit is the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, that can be downloaded freely from the International Phonetic Association site. You'll see the link here, and I will place the link down there at the bottom of this PowerPoint presentation so that you will have time to access it. So it's the International Phonetic Association site, and you're looking for the International Phonetic Alphabet Chart. So I hope you gather at this point how important it is to be focusing on the sounds and not what you're seeing for this portion of learning presentations I'm providing here. We are focusing on sounds, and if you see anything right now, it will be more of a phonetic symbol, not a letter of the alphabet, and these phonetic symbols simply represent sounds that are heard in all languages. English uses 44 and possibly 48 of those phonemes. So we are learning to recognize sound, phonemes, and we're also learning to pronounce these sounds, phonemes. We do not have to be perfect. It's all about the practice, and with the more practice, the better we get at learning a new language. So if you're feeling frustrated or confused, don't worry. We will get there, one step at a time. One word at a time. We're learning as we go. Are you ready now to move on a little further into sound? Please stay tuned for the following presentations on phonemic awareness.